Hey everybody, Chris van der Kerk at Blue Rhino Safaris. Yeah, let's continue with our chat in the Blueshirt series. This is video number 4, and I'm going to continue the thoughts behind vehicle selection. And what is left, as far as I'm concerned, to talk about is the automatic versus manual transmission. Also the fuel type, petrol or diesel, and the last thing, tire choice. I will do more extensive videos on things like tires a little bit further in the series, but for now there's just a basic choice that we have to make. So let's start with number 1, auto or a manual gearbox. It is a question that I get quite a lot. And it depends what you want to do with your vehicle. So there will be 2 factors. The one will be your physical abilities. If you struggle to use a clutch, if you don't want to do the gear changing and that's not your thing anymore, after so many years you're done with manuals, it's fine. That is a valid reason to switch over to automatic transmission. I switched over to automatic transmission last year. I've always been driving manual shifts, but last year I switched over to automatic just to have a little bit of the more luxurious style of driving. But there is a difference between the two, and let's quickly chat about the two. So the choice for the purchase of the vehicle, aside from your physical abilities to change gears, that aside, the choice between manual shift and automatic depends on why you purchased the vehicle. If you purchase the vehicle to do almost exclusively safari and touring stuff, so you're going to Botswana and Zambia and Malawi and Serengeti and all that stuff, then it doesn't make a difference, but an automatic vehicle becomes a little bit more comfortable because you're driving long distances. And when you're driving long distances and doing safari stuff, the idea with driving is that it should be easy. It should be comfortable. If it's not comfortable, you get in bed at night and you are knackered because you had all this work to do during the day. So if you buy a vehicle for 4x4 stuff, you want to go on the weekends and do 4x4 tracks and things like that, then personally I would lean towards manual shifts. The reason for that is if I put a manual shift gear in position, so I select first gear low range, then the engine will die if I don't manage it properly, which means I have total control over the vehicle. Total control over the vehicle. I can let it die if I want it to die. If I'm in an automatic vehicle, I don't have that control. If I go up a steep incline and there's a rock in the way and I got caught on the rock and the vehicle slows down sufficiently, it just kicks out and the car stands and idle, and then the recovery process is a lot different. And I don't really like that. I like to have full control of the vehicle because then I determine when the vehicle is in gear and when it's not. Automatic, you don't have that choice. So if you want to do something full on 4x4, then I would say a manual gearbox would be better. For example, we were in very sandy conditions in the Skeleton Coast, and a vehicle got stuck in the sand, or automatic vehicle with a powerful engine. And that vehicle, recovering that vehicle was tremendously difficult, because if you engage drive on an automatic vehicle and it's in sand, and what you want is a very, very smooth, slow rotation of the wheel just to get going. You literally want 5 centimeters of traction before you can start applying power. The automatic sits still in the sand and it's doing nothing, and you have to apply the accelerator and apply it, more power, more power, more power, and then it kicks in. And when the torque converter kicks in, that jolt is just too much for that sandy conditions, and the vehicle spins. And once it spins, you're dead in the water again, you start all over. Where if it was a manual, you would let the clutch go and sliding the clutch a little bit, yes, but you could manage how you apply the power to get you out. So in 4x4 conditions, a manual for me gives me more control. I can decide how much power goes to the wheels with the use of my clutch. I don't rely on a torque converter or automatic clutch kicking in and kicking out. I have full control over that. So for me, the choice when it comes to manual or automatic is really, why did you buy the vehicle? If you bought it for 4x4 work, automatic will work, yes, but I think a manual is better. If you bought it for safari work and touring, then manual will definitely work. It's a little bit cheaper normally, but automatic just makes it a little bit more comfortable, so that in the evenings when you get to camp, you are not so tired. It does save a little bit. It's like the steering of any vehicle. If you battle to steer a vehicle, your shoulders get really tight and very tired, and in the evenings you're just knackered. But if you have a vehicle that steers easy, we talked about the short wheelbases versus long wheelbases. These are all things to help you just to be more comfortable in the vehicle. So manual or automatic doesn't really matter. Whatever is the easiest for you, whatever you can get your hands on, whatever you prefer is fine in my line of work when we talk about safari work. The second choice you have to make is the type of fuel that you're going to go for. Is it going to be a petrol vehicle or is it going to be a diesel vehicle? So in Europe, diesels are being phased out. The world has turned against diesel as a bad fuel that is not green enough. I'm fine with the whole green theory. But in Africa, we are going to be stuck with vehicles on diesel for many years to come. So I don't foresee diesel disappearing in Africa. I think diesels will be around for the rest of my life at least. So I don't think from a fuel availability point of view that is going to be an issue. There's too many vehicles in Africa that is diesel, and it will be diesel for the next so many years. We don't have the luxury that Europe have, where we can just change vehicles because we have a lot of money and we can do it. In Africa we can't. We have to deal with what we've got. So I think availability of diesel will always be available in Africa. So when it comes to modern vehicles, the turbo diesels, the turbo that you added to the diesel changed the turbo diesel to such an extent that they mimic a petrol vehicle. A petrol vehicle doesn't have a lot of torque at the bottom, but as you go through the revs, your power increases, and at high speed you have power. A diesel has good low in torque, but there's no power at the high end unless you add a turbo to it, which means it now has good low in torque and it has a lot of power at the high rev end of things. And that has changed a lot to what you can do with a diesel. I did skeleton coast the first time with my 4.2 straight 6 Land Cruiser Troopy, no turbo, just a straight 6 normally aspirated diesel engine. I didn't get stuck on the trip once. Many vehicles did get stuck. I did not get stuck once, and if you don't count when I drove into a big hole. Didn't get stuck, I drove into a hole, but in any case. So you can do the skeleton coast with a normally aspirated diesel, you can, but it's a lot more difficult. If you drive in sand, you want wheel speed as part of the package. If you need the wheel speed, you want to put your foot down and go, then you want to do that. A diesel is not going to do it unless it has a turbo on it. So if you're driving a modern vehicle and you can get a 2.4 or a 2 liter with a turbo on it, or whatever you get these days, the turbo brings the diesel performance more in line with the petrol. And therefore, with the modern vehicles with a turbo on a diesel, it's not going to be much different from a petrol vehicle. Fuel consumption, petrols are normally a little bit heavier on fuel than the modern turbo diesels, but it's much of a muchness. If you go on a trip once a year or twice a year, then you just save a little bit more money. You can buy petrol or you can buy diesel. As far as the fuel availability go, dirty fuel, clean fuel, these days there's so many fuel pumps that we can use. They get fresh fuel so regularly that we don't have the issues that we used to have 20 years ago. Local guys are traveling around with their own vehicles, filling up everywhere and carrying on and doing their thing. So is there a difference between petrol and diesel? Which one should I go for? Again, your personal preference and what you want to do with the vehicle. A V6 petrol is a nice vehicle. That's the way that the Europeans are going is for petrols, but diesel is going to be available in Africa, so it doesn't really matter. Again, fuel type, it's your choice. For safari work, it makes no real difference. The only thing I can say is if you're towing, I'm not a big fan of turbo diesels when it comes to towing. A turbo diesel does generate more heat under the bonnet. It's interesting, when I was still studying, and yes, there was a time that I studied, the underbonnet temperature of a turbo engine is about 10 degrees higher than the underbonnet temperature of a normally aspirated engine. So your temperature of the engine compartment is 10 degrees up from where it was 50 years ago in modern vehicles. And therefore your temperature management of the engine is more critical. You have to get rid of the heat because the turbo reintroduces the exhaust heat back into the engine. And if you don't want to cook your engine, you need to have a very good cooling system. So on the older diesels with turbos on them, you have a lot of blown head gaskets when you start towing, because you can't get the cooling through the engine enough. And the engine gas temperatures go up, and suddenly you have a blown head gasket. Modern vehicles, it's less of a thing, but it's stuck in my memory. Underbonnet temperature of turbo vehicles is more, and therefore needs more attention when it comes to towing. So that's the only difference between petrols and diesels is modern diesels with the turbos, be careful of underbonnet temperatures of the engine. So what do we choose? Doesn't make a difference. Whatever works for you, that's the one that you would go for. And then the last thing is tires. Tire choices is one of those things that's also written about extensively on the forums, and everybody has an opinion on tires, and it really is also one of those issues. What tires do I use? Well, it doesn't make a difference. Your pressure in your tire plays a bigger role in your ability in obstacles than your tire choice. If I drive in sandy conditions or muddy conditions with or just a normal road tire that I deflated significantly, my traction will pretty much be the same as a mud terrain tire that I've decreased half the pressure. So a stiffer tire with mud terrain will give me the same traction as a road tire that is very soft. So you can negotiate obstacles and negate the issues by just changing tire pressures. So you don't have to buy a mud terrain tire because you're going to Uganda and it might rain. It's an expensive tire. It is noisy. It is bad in rainy conditions, but it's great when it gets to mud. So you can really go back to, well, let's go for something that is affordable and that I can trust. And that to me is more where the key of tire choice lies, is can I trust a tire or not? And I've gone on in the past about certain brands, and everybody has heard me talk about some brands I would do, some I wouldn't do. And I've ultimately settled for myself in the work that I do with BF Goodrich's, because the BFs are just trustworthy for me. I haven't had problems with them. They don't do out of rounds. They don't have blisters on the sidewalls. They give me good life. Rand per kilometer, they are one of the cheapest tires that you can buy because you can get 100,000 Ks on a set. So for me, it is just the best choice. It works for me. It works on my Hilux. It worked on my Land Cruiser. So I just don't have to look any further. So it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that it's all terrains. BF Goodrich now has a new tire out, a terrain something. It's like a cross between a tar road tire and a gravel tire. It's not an all-terrain tire, but it's sort of in there. Would I consider it? Yes, I would consider it, because the construction of Goodrich is very good. Same for Cooper, same for the best brands that you get out there. The construction of the tire is really good. The choice in rubber that they use to physically manufacture the tire is very good. There's technology when you manufacture a tire. It's not just rubber that you slap on a car. There's canvas that has to go in. There's nylon There's steel belt that has to go in. There's certain choices on the rubber compounds that has to go in, and that will give you your longevity. It will reduce your cutting properties. All of those things play a factor when it comes to which tire do you choose. For me, over the last 15 years, I've settled on BF Goodrich. Coopers have always just been a little bit more expensive, so I've never gone away from BFs. I just stick to them because they don't give me hassles. I use the all-terrains because I'm off-road a lot, and I need the aggressive knobblies just to help protect the tire against stones and wear off on gravel roads. But if you want to use the tires that your Navarro came out with when you bought it from the shop floor, you can do any trip on my calendar with a normal road tire that you got the vehicle on from the shop floor. Any one of those. Sometimes the sidewalls are a little bit thinner and you have to think a little bit more about sidewall cuts and losing a tire on a trip and how many spares do you take. But I've lost BF Goodrich on sidewall cuts. I've seen Coopers lost on sidewall cuts. I've seen Wranglers lost on sidewall cuts. It happens when it happens, and then it's just one of those things. I found that I have less issues when I go with the BFs. But as I say, that's just something that I've learned over time, and I'm happy with that. So what tire choice do you have? Which tires should you fit onto your vehicle when you want to travel and do safari work? Doesn't matter. You can go with a highway terrain tire. You can go with the expensive brand. You can go with a cheap brand. The rule does apply that the cheaper you go, the more chance you have of issues. The more expensive you go, the better quality tire you get that is not going to give you issues. But luck plays a very big role. There's a stone that you didn't see. You can have the most expensive tire and you can cut it. And everybody else drives cheap tires and they see the stone and they don't cut the wheel. So it has a lot to do with that as well. And I think that's it for this video. Manual or automatic, doesn't matter. Whatever you prefer works for you, you do that. Fuel type, diesel or petrol, doesn't matter. Whatever you prefer, you do that. Tire choice, doesn't really matter. Whatever you prefer, you do that. It's a philosophy that I have in touring, and that is that you should be touring with what you've got to save the money for enjoying the trip. You should never spend money on your equipment if you already have equipment that works. So that goes for tents, it goes for fridges, it goes for vehicles. If you have a vehicle that you trust and it works for you, it's good enough, then it will work. But if you're investing in a new vehicle and you're wanting something for the long run, there's my answers on a few of the underlying questions. Otherwise, I trust you enjoyed the video and have a great day until we see each other on the next trip. Cheers.